This report by the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime, tracking the politics of murder in South Africa, has honed in on the country's political assassination rate. It asserts that the number of politically linked murders has steadily risen since around 2010, based on data from as early as the year 2000. Rumbi Mtamba, who is a co-author of the report and an analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime, joins me now. Rumbi, good morning to you. Welcome to the program and thank you for your time. We'll get to the details in just a moment, but I'd like for you to just share with our viewers some background as to why you looked at this specific area and the process that goes into the compilation of a report like this.
Thank you, Iman. So what inspired the report is the fact that we have police statistics being released annually, but they are not disaggregated. So we found that there was a high occurrence of assassinations and targeted killings in South Africa, but there wasn't readily available data to disaggregate these police statistics. So we started the data collection, and our methodology largely relies on publicly available sources of information. So these would be news articles, court recordings as well, court documents as well. And because of our reliance on publicly available information, our data is largely an undercount because not all cases are reported on publicly. So that is what has also inspired the collection of the data, the fact that there hasn't been a wide coverage on cases of targeted killings, although we've seen that they've steadily increased since the year 2000. So we've collected data since 2000, and we disaggregate this data into 4 categories. We look at politically related killings, we look at organized crime related killings, we also look at personal killings. These are largely over romantic disputes or for insurance fraud purposes. And then lastly, we also look at taxi-related killings.
All right. The next question then, against the backdrop of what you're saying, underreported numbers, so the picture could be much higher than what we're sharing now. Some chilling details show up in this politics of murder report, especially coming in the lead up to these elections. 35 assassinations during the first 4 months of 2024, of which 10 were political killings, an average hit then of one hit, or an average of one hit every 2 weeks. So this raises concerns about a risk of political violence as candidates vie for posts in the lead up to and after the May 29 elections. Just as a quick explainer, why are these identified as political killings?
So we identify them as politically related killings because of 2 things. The first thing is we look at the profession of the person that is targeted. And what we found is mostly these are usually local councillors. But then in addition to that, we're also looking at people that work in government administrative positions. So we look at people that hold either political or government administrative positions, which is almost always in local government from what our research has shown. In addition to that, we've also included whistleblowers as well as political activists, and we also have recorded cases of workers of state-owned enterprises. So it's an all-encompassing category, looking at both the motive as well as the profession of the target.
And what did you find out in terms of the motives then?
So in terms of motives, we found that it's usually largely due to competition over lucrative municipal positions. So we know that councillors have access to lucrative government tenders, and they have a say in who receives the tenders for service delivery, for example. In addition to that, we've also found that another motive is for access to these tenders and service delivery contracts. So there is that competition either between business people, or there is collusion between people that work in government administrative positions and criminal actors, so that they can either eliminate people that are awarded these tenders or eliminate any competition, so that a much more favored candidate is awarded a specific tender, for example. But we've also found that some of the motives have been to silence whistleblowers and to silence political activists, so to deter people from coming forward when they have information on corruption, for example. So those are some of the reasons why these political killings have been instigated.
So the highest number of political assassinations in 2023 were 19 recorded in KwaZulu-Natal. And this is a province particularly affected by violence and the targeting of local councillors. Significantly fewer cases recorded here in Gauteng than in the Eastern Cape, Limpopo and Mpumalanga and the Western Cape. It would seem then that KwaZulu-Natal is the deadliest province for politicians or councillors in this country.
Yes, that's what the data shows. But just to add another caveat there is that while we find that there are a lot of cases recorded, particularly in KZN, and there are a number of reasons for this, what we've seen in recent years, looking back at data from like 21, for example, or 2022, we found that the Eastern Cape has also come up in cases of politically related killings as well. But you are right that the majority of the cases that we have recorded have been in the KZN province.
Which political parties are losing more members, and do you know why, Rumbi? I'm also thinking about that interview that my colleague had on the earlier program with the IFP's Velenkosini Hlabisa, who talked about intra-party killings, acquiescing and acknowledged that that's a reason for some of the politically related deaths and killings, murders, assassinations, and also the fighting over tenders. Were you able to do that split between political parties themselves?
So to a certain extent, yes, because we've been collecting data since the year 2000, we are able to see some patterns. So one of the patterns that we saw prior to the year 2020, around 2021, was that this was largely an intra-party problem, where a lot of the cases that were being recorded were ANC-related cases. But then from the year 2021 going forward, we've seen that there's been a mix of other political parties as well, also alluding to the fact that these are now inter-party related killings as well, in addition to intra-party killings. So we have recorded cases from a significant number of political parties, including some of the most prominent political parties, such as the EFF, the DA. They've all lost members to politically related killings, as well as members of the IFP, for example. So it's a mixture of all political parties at this point.
As we look back over the last 23 years, Rumbi, you note that there was a total of 488 politically motivated assassinations reported between 2000 and 2023. How much does this tell us about the threat to democratic processes? And in fact, in part of what you had, had found was that there seemed to have been a spike also during years where there were municipal or general elections.
Yes, so I think what the data is showing us is that there is a problem within the political landscape in South Africa. Again, because this isn't just a single political party problem, this is a problem that a lot of political parties have. This is a problem that is with the larger political landscape in South Africa, which is quite concerning. Another thing also is that we've seen reports from the Moruane Commission, for example, and the recommendations that they offer. It seems that there are problems within political party structures where they do not teach their candidates and their members on amicable dispute resolution processes, or processes that are much more legal in a sense. So this is a problem that we see in terms of just the larger political landscape. But then the threat to democracy is what's more concerning. The fact that these killings send a chilling message to either aspiring politicians as well as to political party supporters as well. It deters them from voting for their chosen candidates, for example. It deters people from coming forward to stand for these positions. So that threat to democracy as well is another consequence that we're seeing of these politically related killings.
Perhaps the next question doesn't quite cover, what your mandate is and also what you covered in the study. But I was struck by something that Velenkosini Hlabisa said this morning about getting the cooperation of other leaders, particularly in this context of this corrosive influence or corrosive effect of political killings. That there were letters written to try and get the other political players. He spoke specifically about the ANC and not receiving an acknowledgement on that letter, and moves made to try and close the gap between these political players. They're talking about, the IFP is talking about accountability, the identifying of potential attackers. In other words, creating a transparent environment within their political circles to out people who are perpetuating this sort of thing. What is your comment on that? Again, I know that it's not part of the study, but what is your commentary on how political parties can close the gap and also get rid of political opportunists?
So we found that political parties play a huge role. And again, this is something that was also recommended by the Moruane Commission, that political parties need to play a much bigger role in transparency, accountability, in educating their political party members. So I would largely agree with the quote that you've just read out before, and also just in support of what the Moruane Commission found as well. So I think absolutely political parties should come together and address this problem.
Before I let you go, just one final quick thing. If we widen the aperture, a total of 131 assassinations in 2023 related to organised crime. Some of the things you talked about at the beginning of our interview, the minibus taxi industry, along with political assassinations, but also personal killings, romantic and family killings. There's a case we're covering today in relation to insurance payouts. The number of assassinations or contract killings, although let me come to the next piece if there's time. But just talk to us about that. I mean, we're living in a very deadly environment in South Africa right now. Maybe just explain a little bit more around the dimensions of some of those numbers I've just talked about.
Yes, thank you. So of the 131 cases, you are right, these encompass minibus taxi industry killings, and these killings are usually over taxi routes and taxi fares, but also just disputes within the taxi industry as well. We've also recorded 46 cases in 2023 of organized crime-related cases, usually involving disputes between criminal gangs, for example, or the targeting of business people. And then in addition to that, we've also recorded cases of personal assassinations. What is leading to these killings is firstly the low murder solving rates, so the low investigative capabilities of the police. Research from the Institute of Security Studies, for example, shows that the police are only able to solve about 15% of murders. That emboldens contract killers, hired assassins. In addition to that, because of the brazenness of the killings, we're seeing that the killers are becoming much more emboldened. So there's just a chilling message going out that you're not safe anyway. In restaurants, in churches, people are being targeted. In addition to that, what we're also seeing is that it is becoming much more cheaper to actually take out a hit on somebody as opposed to following amicable as well as legal routes. So, for example, in divorce proceedings, we're finding that in some cases it has become much cheaper to hire a hitman than it is to hire a divorce lawyer, for example, or to hire a business lawyer when you have a business dispute with a partner. So these are some of the intricacies of targeted killings that we're seeing, and some of the reasons behind these targeted killings. So a much more emboldened environment, also compounded that there are readily available pools of hitmen from the taxi industry as well as from organized criminal gangs.
Very, very depressing, the last bit of what you're saying, because it seems that this atmosphere of impunity is thick and it is far-reaching all across the country. If, as you say, in terms of the resolution of murder cases or accountability, a low 15% rate, there's a lot of answers that we need to get from enforcement authorities, not just the police, who already will say, that they are under-resourced, but also from crime intelligence and other networks who are responsible for keeping us safe, because it is only going to get worse. Thank you very much, though, Rumbi, for sharing with us the attributes of that report. And this is the Politics of Murder report. A lot of great detail in there, so go and access it if you can. And it was put together by the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime. I was talking there to Rumbi Mtamba, one of the authors of that report.